Hello there! Today we're going to be looking at who does space travel best, and we'll be focusing on Star Wars. Space is big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. This is of course from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and that means if you want space travel you have two options: increase speed to faster than light, or FTL for short, to reduce journey time, or make everything close together. So last time we looked at Star Trek's warp drive, and today we're doing probably the biggest, or second biggest depending on who you ask, sci-fi franchise, and it is Star Wars' hyperdrive. So get yourself some blue milk, here's where the fun begins. Background: hyperspace was an alternate dimension that could only be accessed by travelling FTL, and is the method all ships use in the Star Wars galaxy to traverse space. Hyperspace travel is seen in nature, with the Purrgil being able to travel through hyperspace, often being seen as bad luck or pests by pilots, as collisions with Purrgil at hyperspace would seriously damage, if not destroy, a ship. Hyperspace technology is thought to have originated with a species known as the Rakata, a species who uses this technology to conquer. 200 years later, around 25,053 BBY, people on Corellia and Duro figured out a technological solution to using the Force for space travel, which is what the Rakata did. 20 years later, and hyperdrives are on the market, and the nature of exploration and colonization begin as more planets gained access to hyperspace travel. This colonization led to a galactic economy and a standard currency and the language of BASIC. So the technology is very old, dating back to the Old Republic, but has it advanced through the Republic, Imperial and New Republic eras, with the lanes being charted in ancient times. So Class 3 and 2 were the most common in Clone Wars, and speeds did increase to Class 2 or even 1 during the Empire, and we will explore hyperspace classes later on. Some of the first stable lanes were the Caridian Run and the Perlemian trade route. So these charts were used to select the quickest, safe route for a ship, and this was done with a navicomputer or even an astromech droid. Ships could travel the entire known galaxy, spanning over 120,000 light years in a few days at most, and travel time depended on just destination, start place, route, and hyperdrive class. Statistics. So there were different types of hyperdrive, which allowed for different speeds in hyperspace. The Millennium Falcon has a class of 0.5 and is considered the fastest ship. So the class was a multiplier for the base travel time. For example, hyperdrive of class 2 took twice the base time, and a class of 0.5 took half the base time. So there isn't much lore regarding hyperspace, so we're branching into legends, using Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire trilogy. So here we see a logarithmic scale, with 0.3 being 0.14 light years per hour, 0.4 is 3 light years an hour, and 0.5 is 127 light years an hour, and this can be plotted on a graph to calculate possible speeds for different classes. So although this contradicts the canon, it is what I'll be using for this, as it shows the progression of speed, and it is a little more similar to other franchises. So coaxium was an efficient fuel source used, as small amounts could power an entire fleet of ships. In-universe science. So ships would jump into hyperspace using hyperdrives, and then traverse hyperspace lanes traveling the galaxy. Hyperdrives were made using a titanium chromium compound to withstand the stress of hyperspace. Unfortunately, hyperspace is not brilliantly understood in Star Wars, probably so the writers didn't need to limit themselves with consistency. So space was split into real space and hyperspace, and in hyperspace the laws of space and time do not apply. So the hyperdrive accelerates the ship FTL, and a CMU tunnel is formed, which is a pocket of real space, which allows for safe travel through the alternate hyperspace dimension. The fuel for this was hypermatter particles. One form of hypermatter was the previously mentioned coaxium, which was mined on Kessel. So this was a rare fuel, and this could be seen as 100 kilograms of refined coaxium fetched around 60 million credits. So despite the price tag, coaxium was a powerful fuel source, being able to power many ships in small quantities. It was so good that the Empire guarded shipments of coaxium and wanted to control its production. So calculations were needed to avoid crashing, so you tended to only travel mapped out hyperspace lanes. Charting a new lane would provide great trade and military benefits, as you could travel faster than the existing route. A navicomputer would compare the desired path with charted hyperspace lanes and plot the correct course. If there wasn't a direct route, you would simply drop out of hyperspace at a precise point and jump into another lane, like having connections in a train or plane ride. So making the jump emitted Crowley radiation, which was detectable by sensors. IRL science. Unlike other sci-fi franchises, which has FTL travel, Star Wars takes a different approach of having the relative distance differ in different dimensions, like how travelling the Nether is quicker than travelling the overworld in Minecraft. So hyperspace essentially connects 2 points in real space via a tunnel, and we have this in our own universe. So wormhole connects points in space-time. Space can be folded through a dimension, which we can travel through, essentially taking a shortcut. Sadly, we haven't discovered any actual wormholes, so this is just a theoretical method of travel. String theory states everything in the universe is made up of strings. These strings are either looped or straight. So the Bosnick string theory theorizes there are 26 dimensions. So if this is the case, some of these strings or dimensions could be folded over each other, and if we can hop into these dimensions, we could have a shorter distance to travel. So Bosnick string theory is slightly outdated now, but current theory still predicts 10 space-time dimensions, so it may be less probable, but still possible, to hop into another dimension to reduce overall distance. Hyperdrives are made out of a titanium-chromium compound. We have this on Earth. We have titanium-chromium alloys, and these have a melting point of around 1560 degrees centigrade, so it would work well in space and for housing reactions that can accelerate a ship to light speed, as a lot of heat would be produced as a byproduct. So these alloys are used in our own spacecraft and aircraft due to their high tensile strength, lightweight, and corrosion resistance, so using this for hyperdrive is a sensible choice. Risk. Hyperspace was coterminous with real space, so each point in real space had a unique point in hyperspace. So objects like planets and stars also had a shadow counterpart in hyperspace, so had to be navigated around. So maps had to be continually updated as celestial bodies in space moved, but this was normally automatically detected and updated in a central archive. So to avoid accidental collisions, the ships would be forced out of hyperspace if they detected a large mass shadow, like that of a celestial body. So the Empire took advantage of this by making interdictor vessels which used gravity well projectors, essentially creating artificial mass shadows which forced rebel ships out of hyperspace and prevented them jumping back into hyperspace. So if the hyperdrive ran out of fuel or stopped working mid-flight, the ship would fall out of hyperspace, back into real space, and possibly could be stranded. So similar to most fuel sources across any universe, including our own, it is a non-renewable fuel and in need of refinement. Coaxium is no exception, and is also volatile in its raw state, and even refined it needs to be stored correctly to avoid explodification. So collisions at hyperspace are deadly, not just for the ship, but surrounding planets. So one ship, called the Legacy Run, made its way through hyperspace, and a Nihil ship was able to bisect the hyperspace route using paths and collided with the Legacy Run. This resulted in what was soon referred to as the Great Hyperspace Disaster. In addition to the Legacy Run being ripped apart, debris from both ships fell out of hyperspace across systems in the Outer Rim and hurtled towards planets at great speeds. Debris coming out of hyperspace was dubbed emergencies, and over 30 of them occurred, threatening multiple inhabited worlds. So picture the asteroid that hit the dinosaurs times 30. Now it's time to jump, not to hyperspace, but to the conclusion. So hyperdrive might not have been intended to be a scientifically plausible method of travel, as if we can believe in the Force, lightsabers, so on, then FTL travel isn't so far-fetched. However, the science all depends on whether there are dimensions beyond our own four. String theories and wormholes are all bound to pen and paper and equations, as we haven't actually been able to see these in real life. Wormholes are probably the closest thing to hyperspace lanes we have, and the science, although theoretical, is strong. We can see this by taking some paper, folding it and sticking a point through it to show folding of space-time, as travelling not through the hole takes a whole lot longer than going through the hole. The biggest drawback is how to enter hyperspace, as in Star Wars, ships travel FTL to jump into hyperspace, and FTL isn't possible if you have a mass. So hyperspace is fast. Large distances can be traversed in minutes and the entire galaxy in days. These fast speeds make sense for single-manned vessels to have hyperdrives, as you won't have to travel for too long for most journeys. The biggest risk is simply crashing, as all you would see is a tiny speck get bigger and bigger until splat, all in a few seconds or less. With Navi computers and maps being available for the public, these risks are minimised. So Star Wars does space travel well, mostly by not being bogged down on science and consistency, but if we had to pick a method for FTL travel, hyperspace would be very convenient. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. I'll talk again